309 confirmed kills. That's not a myth whispered around campfires. That's not Soviet propaganda designed to inflate morale. That's the documented, verified death toll attributed to a single woman who changed the way the world understood war, gender, and the cost of survival. Her name was Ludmila Pavlichenko. The Nazis called her Lady Death. German commanders offered rewards for her capture. Enemy soldiers shouted threats through loudspeakers, promising to tear her into 309 pieces. Yet she outlasted them all. And here's the part that shook the foundations of military history. She wasn't a soldier when the war began. She was a university student, a historian, a 24-year-old woman studying the past, never imagining she would become its deadliest female warrior. Born on July 12, 1916, in the small Ukrainian village of Belaya Surkov, south of Kiev, Ludmila Mikhailovna Belova grew up in a world still reeling from the Great War. Her childhood was unremarkable in many ways, typical of a Soviet girl in the interwar years, but there was something different about her, something her mother noticed early on. Ludmila was competitive, fiercely so. She described herself as a tomboy, someone who refused to let boys outdo her at anything. When the neighborhood boys bragged about their athletic prowess, she trained harder. When they claimed superiority in any field, she made it her mission to prove them wrong. This wasn't rebellion. It was determination forged in the fires of a culture that underestimated her, simply because she was female. Age 14. Her family moved to Kiev, Ukraine's vibrant capital. The city opened new worlds to her. She attended factory school, learning the skills of industrial work that defined Soviet life. But Kiev offered something else, something that would shape her destiny in ways no one could have predicted. In the early 1930s, the Soviet Union was building a culture of preparedness. The memories of foreign intervention during the Russian Civil War haunted Soviet leadership. They believed another war was inevitable, and when it came, every citizen would need to be ready. This philosophy gave birth to OSO-EVRKM, a paramilitary organization that trained civilians in military skills, including marksmanship. Ludmila joined a shooting club in Kiev, not because she dreamed of war, but because she was curious and competitive. The shooting club gave her access to rifles, training, and targets. She discovered something remarkable about herself. She was a natural marksman. Her hands were steady, her eyes were sharp, but more than that, her mind was disciplined. Shooting wasn't just about pulling a trigger. It was about patience, calculation, wind resistance, distance estimation, breathing control. It was science and art intertwined. She excelled so rapidly that she earned her Voroshilov sharpshooter badge, a prestigious civilian marksmanship certificate. By her late teens, Ludmila could outshoot most men in her club. Yet she had no intention of becoming a soldier. She had other plans. In 1937, she enrolled at Kiev University to study history. She wanted to teach, to research, to contribute to Soviet society through education and scholarship. History fascinated her. The rise and fall of empires, the decisions that shaped nations, the individuals who changed the course of human events. She was working toward her master's degree, planning her doctoral research, building a quiet academic life. Then, on June 22, 1941, at 3:15 in the morning, everything changed. Nazi Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in human history. 3 million Axis troops poured across Soviet borders in a blitzkrieg designed to annihilate the Soviet Union within months. The invasion was swift, brutal, and merciless. Ludmila was 24 years old when Nazi fighters buzzed low over Kiev, strafing civilians, bombing university buildings. She watched her College of History, the place where she'd spent years studying the past, reduced to burning rubble. The future she'd planned evaporated in smoke and ash. Within hours of the invasion, she made her decision. She went to the recruitment office to volunteer for the Red Army, not for glory, not for adventure, for survival, for her country, for revenge. The recruitment officers laughed at her. A woman, a student. They suggested she become a nurse. She could bandage wounds, comfort the dying, stay safely behind the lines. But Ludmila didn't come to wrap bandages. She came to fight. She told them about her marksmanship training, her Voroshilov sharpshooter badge, her competition scores. They were skeptical. Finally, to get rid of her, they gave her a rifle and pointed to a distant target. "If you can hit that," they said, "we'll consider it." She picked up the Mosin-Nagant rifle, felt its familiar weight, controlled her breathing, and fired. The bullet struck dead center. She fired again. Another perfect hit. The laughter died. The officers exchanged glances. The Red Army desperately needed snipers, and this woman had just proven she could shoot. They enlisted her on the spot. In late June 1941, Lyudmila Pavlichenko arrived at the front lines near Odessa, a strategic port city on the Black Sea. The reality of war hit her immediately. This wasn't a shooting range with paper targets and safety protocols. This was chaos, explosions, screaming, blood, the smell of death. She was initially assigned to dig trenches and lay communication lines, armed with nothing but a single RGD-33 grenade due to severe weapons shortages. But fate intervened. A comrade near her was hit by shrapnel, grievously wounded. As he fell, he handed her his Mosin Nagant bolt-action rifle, the same model she'd trained with in Kiev. "Use it," he gasped. "Make them pay." She took the rifle and moved forward into the sniper screen, the thin line of sharpshooters positioned ahead of the main defensive positions. Her first encounter with the enemy came within days. Through her scope, she saw a German soldier moving carelessly through a field, confident, unaware. Her finger hesitated on the trigger. This wasn't a target. This was a human being. She could see his face. For a moment, the history student warred with the soldier she'd become. Then she thought of her burning university, the civilians strafed in the streets, the invasion that had destroyed her future. She pulled the trigger. The man dropped. Her first kill. She felt sick, but there was no time for emotion, no space for doubt. The war demanded more. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Pavlichenko's kill count began to rise. 2, 5, 10, 20, 50. Each number represented a Nazi soldier who would never kill another Soviet civilian, never burn another village, never advance another meter into her homeland. She developed her technique, learning to read the battlefield like she once read history texts. She understood wind patterns, light angles, the psychology of her targets. She learned patience, waiting hours, sometimes days, for the perfect shot. She learned camouflage, becoming invisible in rubble, in grass, in shadows. She learned to think like her enemy, to anticipate their movements, to exploit their mistakes. By the time the siege of Odessa ended in October 1941, after 2.5 months of desperate fighting, Pavlichenko had recorded 187 confirmed kills. The number was staggering. She was promoted to senior sergeant, but there was no time to celebrate. The Red Army was retreating. The next battle was coming, and it would be hell on earth. In November 1941, Pavlichenko was transferred to Sevastopol, the fortress city on the Crimean Peninsula. If Odessa had been brutal, Sevastopol was apocalyptic. The city was under siege by German and Romanian forces that vastly outnumbered the Soviet defenders. For 8 months, from November 1941 to June 1942, the siege raged without pause. German artillery pounded the city day and night. Luftwaffe bombers turned streets into craters. Soviet forces held the rubble with their lives. This was where Lyudmila Pavlichenko became a legend. She operated in the ruins, in the mountains surrounding the city, in no man's land, where death waited in every shadow. The terrain was treacherous, collapsed buildings, exposed ridges, open fields, swept by machine gun fire. Yet, she thrived. Her kill count continued to climb. 50 more, 100 more. The German command began to notice. Reports filtered back about a Soviet sniper who never missed, who appeared and disappeared like a ghost, who was picking off officers, machine gunners, artillery spotters, with surgical precision. They gave her a nickname, Lady Death. But Pavlichenko's reputation attracted a deadly response. The Germans began sending their best counter-snipers specifically to hunt her. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were elite marksmen, patient hunters who'd killed dozens of Soviet snipers. The Germans placed bounties on her head. They sent reconnaissance teams to locate her positions. They broadcast threats through loudspeakers positioned across the front lines. "Lyudmila Pavlichenko, come over to us. We will give you plenty of chocolate and make you a German officer." When she didn't respond, the message changed. "If we catch you, we will tear you into 309 pieces." The threats meant nothing to her. What mattered were the duels, the silent, deadly games of chess played with rifles across the ruins of One particular engagement lasted 3 days. A German sniper, reportedly one of their best, was hunting her. She knew he was out there. He knew she was too. Neither could locate the other. For 3 days, they moved through the battlefield like predators circling, searching for any mistake, any shadow, any reflection that would reveal a position. Pavlichenko barely slept. She changed positions constantly, never staying in one place long enough to be tracked. She studied the landscape, looking for the spot her enemy would choose. On the third day, she saw it the faintest glint of light off glass, therefore only a heartbeat. She adjusted her aim, controlled her breathing, and fired. The German sniper's rifle clattered to the ground. Silence returned to that sector of the battlefield. Another duel won by Soviet estimates. Pavlichenko defeated at least 36 enemy snipers in personal duels during the siege of 36 trained killers who had hunted her, and 36 times she'd outweighted, and outshot them. Her total kill count climbed past 200, then 250, then 300. The numbers seemed impossible. German commanders began to dismiss them as Soviet propaganda, exaggerations designed to boost morale. How could one woman, a student just months ago, account for over 300 confirmed enemy dead? It had to be a lie, except it wasn't. Every kill Pavlichenko claimed was verified by a spotter, documented by her commanders, and often confirmed by recovered enemy identification papers. The Red Army's confirmation system was rigorous. Snipers couldn't inflate their numbers. Each kill required evidence, and Pavlichenko's evidence was undeniable. German field officers and frontline troops knew the truth. Lady Death was real, and she was killing them. Then, in June 1942, Lyudmila Pavlichenko's war came to a sudden, violent end. During a German artillery barrage, a mortar shell exploded near her position. Shrapnel tore through her face and body. She was gravely wounded, barely conscious, bleeding heavily. Soviet forces evacuated her by submarine from the besieged city, a perilous journey beneath German-controlled waters. She survived, but her frontline service was over. At just 25 years old, with 309 confirmed kills to her name, Lyudmila Pavlichenko would never return to combat. The Soviet High Command had other plans for her. They realized her value extended beyond the battlefield. The war wasn't just fought with bullets. It was fought with morale, with alliances, with propaganda, and Pavlichenko had become a symbol. In August 1942, barely recovered from her wounds, Pavlichenko was sent on a diplomatic mission to the United States. The Soviet Union desperately needed America and Britain to open a second front in Europe, to relieve pressure on the Eastern Front where millions were dying. Soviet diplomats believed Pavlichenko could be a powerful advocate, a woman warrior who'd killed over 300 Nazi as Americans would have to listen to her. She arrived in America with 2 male Soviet delegates and was immediately thrust into the spotlight. The American press descended on her like vultures, but instead of asking about the war, about the Nazi invasion, about the desperate fighting on the Eastern Front, they asked about her uniform. Why did she wear a military skirt that was so long? Why didn't she wear makeup? Did she curl her hair before battle? The questions were insulting. American reporters treated the deadliest female sniper in history like a fashion curiosity. Pavlichenko's patience snapped. In Chicago, speaking before thousands of Americans, she delivered a speech that would echo through history. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice calm but cutting, "I am 25 years old, and I have killed 309 fascist invaders by now. Don't you think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" The audience fell silent. Then they erupted in applause. The woman they'd dismissed, mocked, and trivialized had just shamed them with the truth. While Americans debated from safety, Soviet women were dying by the thousands on the Eastern Front. While journalists asked about makeup, Pavlichenko had been waging war in the ruins of Her rebuke cut through American complacency like a bullet through glass. The tour continued across the United States. She spoke in New York, Washington, and other major cities, making the case for Allied action. She met President Franklin D. Roosevelt at the White House, and she formed an unlikely friendship with First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, a woman who recognized in Pavlichenko not a propaganda tool, but a fellow advocate for women's rights and human dignity. Eleanor invited Pavlichenko to Hyde Park, the Roosevelt family estate. The two women spent time together, talking about war, about women's roles, about the future they hoped to build after the guns fell silent. Eleanor would later write about Pavlichenko with genuine warmth, calling her charming and remarkable. But Pavlichenko's American tours achieved something more important than friendship. She shifted the narrative. Americans began to understand the scale of Soviet sacrifice, the reality of the Eastern Front, the desperate need for Allied support. Her voice, her story, her undeniable courage made abstract geopolitics personal and urgent. After the American tour, Pavlichenko returned to the Soviet Union. She was promoted to the rank of major and became a sniper instructor, training the next generation of Soviet sharpshooters. In 1943, she was awarded the Gold Star of the Hero of the Soviet Union, the highest honor her country could bestow. She was one of only 92 women to receive the decoration during the war, and one of only 500 snipers, out of 2,000 trained, to survive the war. 1,500 of her fellow snipers died in combat. When the war finally ended in 1945, Pavlichenko returned to the life she'd left behind. She completed her degree at Kiev University, earning her master's in history. She became a historian and researcher, working at Soviet Navy headquarters from 1945 to 1953. She was later active in the Soviet Committee of the Veterans of War, advocating for those who'd served. But the war never truly left her. Like so many combat veterans, she struggled with what we now call PTSD. She suffered from depression, triggered by memories of fallen comrades, of the friends she'd lost, of the faces she'd seen through her scope. Her husband's death in the post-war years deepened her psychological wounds. The woman who'd been so strong, so unbreakable on the battlefield, fought a different war, in peacetime a war, against her own memories. On October 10, 1974, at the age of 58, Lyudmila Pavlichenko died of a stroke in Moscow. She was buried with full military honors, but her legacy didn't die with her. She remains a symbol of courage, determination, and the shattering of gender barriers. She proved that women could not only serve in combat, but excel in the most demanding, dangerous military roles. She forced the world to reckon with uncomfortable truths about gender, about capability, about who gets to be a warrior. Today, historians and military analysts study her tactics, her patience, her psychological resilience. Documentary filmmakers tell her story. In 2015, a biographical film called Battle for Sevastopol introduced her to new generations. Her famous rebuke to American audiences, "Don't you think you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" is quoted in discussions about courage, about sacrifice, about the cost of freedom. But perhaps the most important part of Pavlichenko's legacy is this: she was never trying to be a hero. She was a history student who loved learning, who wanted to teach, who dreamed of a quiet academic life. War was thrust upon her. She didn't seek it. She didn't romanticize it. She simply did what survival demanded, with a discipline and skill that history had never before witnessed in a woman. 309 confirmed kills, each one documented, each one verified, each one proof that when the world said women couldn't, Lyudmila Pavlichenko asked, "Why not?" And then she pulled the trigger. The Nazis called it propaganda, till the bodies piled up, until their best snipers fell, until Lady Death became a name whispered in fear along the Eastern Front, until they couldn't deny the truth anymore. She was real, she was deadly, and she changed warfare forever.